The Harvest Festival on New Jeju was supposed to be the best day of the year. Colorful banners hung between the prefab buildings. The smell of grilled meat and fresh bread filled the air. Children ran through the streets, their laughter echoing off the metal walls of the colony structures. After 8 years of hard work, the 12,000 colonists had finally built something worth celebrating. 7-year-old Nari held her father's hand as they walked through the market stalls. Her father, Junho, was a scientist who studied alien behavior. He smiled down at her, his tired eyes bright for once. Next to them, 12-year-old Minho carried his little sister Hana on his shoulders. She giggled and pointed at everything, her small hands gripping his hair. Around them, families enjoyed the rare moment of peace in the hard life of frontier colonists. The attack came without warning. One moment, music played from the speakers. The next, everything went dark. The electromagnetic pulse hit the colony like a hammer. Every light died. Every computer shut down. The colony's defense systems went offline in an instant. In the sudden darkness, people screamed. Parents grabbed for their children. Then the ships appeared in the sky. They were ugly vessels covered in mismatched armor plates and weapons. Later, people would learn they belonged to the Vrex Consortium, a group of slavers who had operated in the shadows for centuries. But in that moment, the colonists only knew terror. Bright lights flooded down from the ships. Figures in heavy armor dropped from the sky on rocket packs. They moved with military precision, spreading through the festival grounds like a plague. Junho pulled Nari close, trying to shield her. Around him, other parents did the same, but the raiders weren't interested in the adults. They moved through the crowd with scanners, looking for something specific. When their scanners locked onto the children, everything became clear. These weren't random pirates. They were hunters, and human children were their prey. Security Chief Taiyang tried to organize a defense. He had only a handful of officers and basic weapons, but he had to try. He positioned himself between the raiders and a group of children. When the Vrex soldiers moved forward, he opened fire. His bullets sparked off their armor but barely slowed them down. Taiyang killed 2 of them before their return fire cut him down. He died buying the children behind him 30 seconds. It wasn't enough. Teacher Sora grabbed 3 children and ran for the school building. If she could get them inside, maybe she could hide them. She almost made it. A Vrex soldier caught her at the door. She fought like a wildcat, scratching at his helmet, trying to give the children time to run. The soldier shot her twice. She fell across the doorway, still trying to block his path even as she died. The children she tried to save were taken anyway. Junho watched in horror as a raider grabbed Nari. She screamed for him, reaching out with both hands. He lunged forward, but another raider hit him with the butt of a rifle. He fell hard, his vision swimming. Through the blur of pain and tears, he saw them carry his daughter toward the ships. Other children were being dragged, carried, or stunned and loaded like cargo. Minho fought hard, landing kicks and punches, but they overwhelmed him. Little Hana cried for her brother as they were both taken. Hyun Choi, Minho's father, tried to follow. He ran after the raiders, shouting his son's name. A Vrex soldier turned and shot him. The blast caught him in the shoulder and spun him around. He hit the ground hard but stayed conscious. His neural implant, standard for all colonists, was still recording. Through the pain, he forced himself to watch, to remember every detail. The Vrex insignia on the ships, the armor designs, the way they moved. If he survived, someone needed to know what happened here. The raid lasted 15 minutes. 43 children were taken. Ages 4 to 15. Every single one was human. The raiders ignored the few alien colonists living on New Jeju. They only wanted human children. 17 adults died trying to stop them. Security officers, teachers, parents who threw themselves at armored soldiers with nothing but bare hands and desperate love. None of it mattered. The Vrex were professionals. They had done this before to other species on other worlds. They loaded the children into cargo holds like livestock. Inside the ships, the children huddled together. Nari cried for her father. 8-year-old Yuna tried to comfort her, even though she was just as terrified. 14-year-old Jiho pressed against the walls, looking for any weakness, any way out. Minho held his sister Hana tight, whispering that everything would be okay. He didn't believe it, but he had to say something. Around them, the other children sobbed or sat in shocked silence. The Vrex soldiers barely looked at them. To these slavers, the children were just products. Merchandise to be sold at auction to the highest bidder. They had stolen beings from dozens of species over the centuries. They knew which civilizations would pay top price for exotic slaves. And humans still new to the galactic stage were very exotic indeed. The Vrex had no idea what they had just done. As the ships lifted off, power slowly returned to the colony. Emergency generators kicked in. Lights flickered back to life. And the colonists saw the full horror of what had happened. Bodies lay in the streets. The festival grounds were destroyed. And everywhere, parents searched frantically for children who were no longer there. The screaming began then. Not the screams of fear from the attack, but something worse. The screams of parents who knew their children were gone. Junho stumbled through the streets calling Nari's name even though he knew she couldn't hear him. Other parents did the same. They searched every building, every hiding spot, hoping desperately that their children had escaped somehow. But as the count came in, the truth became undeniable. 43 children gone, just gone, taken by aliens they didn't know, for purposes they could only imagine with horror. Hyun dragged himself to the colony's communication center. Blood leaked from his shoulder, but he didn't care. His hands shook as he uploaded the recording from his neural implant. The data packet included everything: the ship designs, the insignia, the tactics, the faces behind those helmets caught in brief moments when they turned toward him, and most importantly, the direction the ships had taken when they jumped to faster-than-light speeds. The emergency beacon activated automatically. It screamed across the void, sending distress signals to the nearest Human Defense Coalition outpost. The message was simple and terrible. New Jeju colony attacked. 17 dead. 43 children kidnapped by unknown aliens. Request immediate assistance. The message traveled at light speed, then through the relay stations that connected human space. It would reach the nearest outpost in hours. It would reach Earth in a day. As night fell on New Jeju, the survivors gathered in the main square. They held a vigil for the dead. They held each other and cried. But underneath the grief, something else was building. Anger. Cold, hard, focused anger. These were frontier colonists, people who had left Earth to build new lives on a distant world. They were tough, resilient, and now they were furious. Their children had been taken. Their friends had been murdered, and someone somewhere was going to pay for it. Junho sat in his empty house holding Nari's favorite toy. The soft stuffed animal smelled like her. He thought about her smile, her laugh, the way she held his hand. And he made a promise to the empty room. He would get her back. Whatever it took, however long it took, wherever they had taken her. He would find her. They all would. Because that's what parents did. That's what humans did. They protected their children. The Vrex ships jumped through hyperspace, heading for their fortress world. The children were cargo now, destined for auction blocks on Zathara Prime. The slavers thought this was just another successful raid. They had no idea they had just made the worst mistake in the history of their organization. They had attacked humans. They had killed human adults. But worse, far worse, they had taken human children. And humanity was about to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The message from New Jeju reached the Human Defense Coalition outpost at Kepler Station within 6 hours. Commander Bora Park was drinking her morning coffee when the priority alert came through. She read the message once, then read it again to make sure she understood. Children. They took children. Her coffee cup shattered on the floor. She didn't notice. She was already running to the command center. Within 30 minutes, every human ship within 5 systems was heading toward New Jeju. Within an hour, the message was transmitted to Earth through the Deep Space Relay Network. And within 6 hours, the Solar Parliament was in emergency session. Representatives from every nation on Earth, every Mars colony, every orbital station gathered in the Great Hall. The chamber was never this full, never this quiet. The Secretary General stood at the podium, her face gray with exhaustion. She had been briefing world leaders all night. Now she had to brief everyone else. She played the recording from Hyun's neural implant. The chamber watched in silence as the raid unfolded. They saw the children being taken. They saw the adults dying. When the recording ended, nobody spoke for a full minute. Then someone started crying. Then everyone was. But Ambassador Rina Han had already tried the official channels. She stood before the Galactic Council, humanity's representatives in the wider community of intelligent species. The council chamber was ancient, built thousands of years ago by civilizations that had long since fallen. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in their assigned seats. Rena stood in the petitioner's circle and presented Earth's case. She showed them everything. The attack footage, the dead colonists, the kidnapped children. She provided the Vrex Consortium's identification markers. She had ship registry data, flight paths, everything. She demanded the Council take immediate action, authorize a joint fleet, issue warrants, send help, anything. The children had been gone for 3 days now. Every hour mattered. The Council's response was not what she expected. The Keltharian delegate, a tall being with silver scales, spoke first. His voice was tired, like he had given this speech many times before. The Vrex operated in unclaimed space. The Council had no jurisdiction there. Besides, pursuing slavers was complicated. It could destabilize trade routes. It might start a war with whoever was protecting them. The Dulathi representative agreed. She was a floating creature of gas and light, beautiful and cold. She explained that the Council had seen many tragedies over the millennia. Individual losses, however painful, could not drive policy. The Council existed to maintain stability. Chasing after every group of pirates and slavers would mean endless conflict. Better to strengthen defenses and move forward. Rena could not believe what she was hearing. These beings, these ancient civilizations, were telling her to abandon 43 children, to write them off as an acceptable loss. The Phocian ambassador, a being of pure energy in a containment suit, tried to be gentle. He pulled Rena aside after the session. He told her quietly that this was how the galaxy worked. Terrible things happened. You mourned and moved on. Humans would learn this in time. Rena transmitted the Council's response back to Earth. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Across every human world, people watched the recordings of the Council session. They heard the casual dismissal of human children's lives. They heard the excuses, the justifications, the cold political calculations, and something in humanity's collective consciousness shifted. The rage was universal. The Solar Parliament met again. This time there was no crying, no speeches about peace and diplomacy. The representatives voted on the Retrieval Act. It passed with no opposition. 0. Every single representative from every nation voted yes. The act was simple and brutal. Any entity that harmed, kidnapped, or enslaved human children was now an enemy of all mankind. No resources would be spared. No distance was too far. No hiding place was safe enough. Admiral Do-hyun received his orders directly from the Solar Defense Chairman. The old admiral had been planning to retire. He had served for 40 years, fought in 3 wars, and lost his own daughter to pirates when she was just 10 years old. That was 20 years ago, and the wound still hurt. But when he read the orders, he knew retirement would have to wait. This was personal. This was for every parent who ever lost a child. The orders gave him complete authority. He could requisition any ship, any weapon, any soldier. He was authorized to cross any border, violate any treaty, use any force necessary. The only mission parameter was clear: bring the children home and make sure this never happened again. Do-hyun assembled his command staff within hours. They called it Task Force Hammer. The name was not subtle. It was not meant to be. Captain Minji arrived at the fleet assembly point within 2 days. She led Ghost Company, humanity's most elite special forces unit. They specialized in impossible rescues and black operations. Minji was short, fierce, and had never failed a mission. Her troops worshipped her. Her enemies feared her. When Do-hyun briefed her on the mission, she listened quietly. Then she asked one question: how much violence was authorized? Do-hyun's answer was simple: whatever it takes. The fleet assembled at Luna shipyards, 15 warships built for total war against potential alien threats. Humanity had never fought a real war in space, but they had prepared for one. The ships bristled with railguns, missile pods, point defense lasers, and enough firepower to glass a planet. 3 Marine divisions loaded onto troop carriers, medical ships prepared for mass casualty events. And in the middle of it all, Ghost Company prepared for their part. Dr. Junho arrived at Luna 3 days after losing Nari. He looked terrible. He had not slept. He had barely eaten. But he carried a data pad filled with research. As a xenopsychologist, he understood how different species thought, how they made decisions, how they could be predicted. Admiral Do-hyun wanted to send him home to let him grieve. Yunyo refused. His daughter was out there. He was going to help bring her back or die trying. The intelligence division activated every asset humanity had in space: Spies, informants, automated listening posts, hacked communication networks. Everything focused on one target, the Vrex Consortium. Where were they based? Who protected them? Where did they take their captives? Who bought from them? Every scrap of information was valuable. Every lead was followed. The analysts worked around the clock. On Earth, people watched the fleet assembly with fierce pride. News channels broadcast footage of the warships leaving dock. Social media exploded with messages of support. Parents everywhere held their children a little tighter. They understood what was happening. Humanity was sending a message to the galaxy. Touch our children and we will end you. It did not matter how far you ran. It did not matter how powerful you were. We would find you. The other species in the galaxy started to notice. Human ships were moving with purpose, crossing through neutral zones without requesting permission. Human intelligence operatives were asking questions in every port and station. The pattern was clear. Humanity was mobilizing for war. But against who? The answer came when Earth broadcast a message across all galactic frequencies. It was in every major language. It was direct and terrifying. The message was simple. To the Vrex Consortium and anyone who helped them. You have taken 43 human children from New Jeju Colony. We are coming for them. This is not a negotiation. This is not a threat. This is a promise. We will cross any distance. We will pay any price. We will break any force that stands in our way. Return our children now or face the consequences. You have been warned. The Vrex Consortium received the message. They were based on Zathara Prime, deep in unclaimed space. Their leadership was not worried. They had operated for centuries. They had the protection of powerful criminal networks. They had dealt with angry species before. Those species always calmed down eventually. They always accepted the loss and moved on. The Vrex had no reason to think humans would be different. They were very wrong. Task Force Hammer departed Luna shipyards exactly 1 week after the New Jeju attack. Admiral Do-hyun stood on the bridge of his flagship, the carrier Indomitable. Around him, 15 warships formed up in attack formation. The fleet jumped to hyperspace together, heading for the first lead in their hunt. As the stars streaked past, Do-hyun looked at the photo on his console. His daughter, smiling, forever 10 years old. This time would be different. This time the children were coming home. Task Force Hammer's first target was Kronos Station. The massive structure floated in neutral space, a haven for smugglers, pirates, and information brokers. It was the kind of place where you could buy anything or anyone if you had enough money. It was also where the Vrex Consortium did business. Admiral Do-hyun did not waste time on diplomacy. The fleet surrounded the station. Every gun pointed inward. The station master was a Phocian named Vex. He had run Kronos for 30 years and considered himself untouchable. When the human fleet appeared, he sent an angry message demanding they leave. His station was sovereign territory. They had no jurisdiction here. Do-hyun's response was broadcast on all frequencies so everyone on the station could hear it. We are not here for jurisdiction. We are here for information. Give us what we need or we will take this station apart piece by piece. Vex laughed at first. He had defenses. He had allies. He had dealt with angry governments before. But then human marines started cutting through his docking ports. They came in fast and hard, clearing sections with brutal efficiency. Vex activated his defense systems. The automated guns fired on the marines. The humans fired back with heavier weapons. Within an hour, 3 decks were in human control. Vex stopped laughing. Captain Minji led the boarding operation herself. Her ghost company moved through the station like shadows. They used stun grenades and flashbangs to clear rooms. They were not there to kill everyone. They were there to find information. But anyone who raised a weapon against them was put down without hesitation. The message was clear. Help us or get out of the way. Fighting us is suicide. The station's criminal council met in emergency session. These were the real power on Kronos, the crime lords and cartel bosses who actually ran things. They realized quickly that the humans were not following normal rules. There was no negotiation, no bribery, no deals, just overwhelming force and absolute determination. The council made a practical decision. They had no loyalty to the Vrex. They handed over a Vrex intermediary named Krell. Krell was brought to Admiral Do-hyun in chains. The alien was a Dulathi, a being of gas and light in a containment suit. He tried to bargain. He offered money, information on other criminals, anything to buy his freedom. Do-hyun was not interested in deals. He had Dr. Junho brought to the interrogation room. Hunyo did not say a word. He just turned on a screen and started playing videos from human history. Krell watched footage of human wars. The great conflicts where millions died, the bombed cities, the nuclear weapons, the total warfare humans were capable of when pushed. But then Junho showed him something worse. He showed him what humans did to those who hurt their children. Historical footage of child killers being hunted down, of entire organizations destroyed for trafficking children, of parents who crossed continents for revenge. Krell began to understand what he was dealing with. The alien started talking. He gave them coordinates for 3 Vrex safe houses. He provided names of key consortium members. He explained the Vrex financial network and how they move their captives. He told them everything he knew, hoping it would be enough to save his life. Do-hyun listened to it all, recorded it all, then had Krell locked in a cell to face trial later. The hunt was accelerating. The first safe house was on Draxus 4, a barely habitable moon with thin atmosphere. The Vrex used it as a way station for moving captives. Task Force Hammer hit it from orbit first. Railgun rounds tore through the facility's shields. Then the Marines dropped in assault pods. The Vrex guards tried to fight but were completely outmatched. Human body armor was better. Human weapons were stronger. Human soldiers were angrier. Captain Minji gave the Vrex one chance to surrender. Some did. They were bound and searched for information. Those who kept fighting were killed. The Marines found holding cells in the safe house. 20 beings from 4 different species were imprisoned there, all destined for slave markets. The humans freed them all. They also found computer records, shipping manifests, client lists, transaction logs. Everything was copied and analyzed. The pattern repeated at the 2nd and 3rd locations. Human forces struck fast and hard. Each raid produced more intelligence. Each captured Vrex operative was interrogated. Some gave up information easily. Others tried to resist. Dr. Junho had a gift for breaking them, not with torture but with understanding. He showed them that humans were not going to stop. Not ever. Cooperation was their only chance at any kind of future. The Galactic Council watched all of this with growing alarm. Human forces were operating across multiple systems. They were violating borders. They were destroying facilities without trial or judgment. Ambassador Rena received daily complaints from council members. She gave the same response every time. You had your chance to help. You chose not to. Now watch what happens when you abandon someone's children. Several species started to reconsider their positions. The Keltharian Empire had lost citizens to the Vrex over the years. They had filed complaints but never acted. Now they watched humans do in weeks what the Keltharians could not do in decades. The Keltharian military studied the human tactics with professional interest. This was not random violence. This was a carefully planned campaign executed with brutal efficiency. On Earth and the colonies, people followed the news obsessively. Every raid was reported. Every freed slave was celebrated. But the 43 children from New Jeju were still missing. The parents waited in agony. Hyun had recovered from his wounds but could not sleep. He watched every broadcast hoping for news. Hunyo sent messages to Nari every day, even though he knew she could not receive them. He needed to believe she knew he was coming. 3 weeks into the campaign, Task Force Hammer had dismantled half of the Vrex Consortium's operation. Dozens of safe houses were destroyed. Hundreds of slaves were freed. The Vrex financial network was in chaos as human cyber warfare specialists froze accounts and traced money flows. But the children from New Jeju were still not found. Every raid, every interrogation led to more of the network but not to the children. Until the breakthrough came. A human intelligence team intercepted a communication. It was encrypted, but human codebreakers were very good. The message was from a Vrex courier ship to the main fortress on Zethera Prime. It mentioned new merchandise arriving for the upcoming premium auction. High-value items, exotic specimens from a recently contacted species. Dr. Junho analyzed the message and felt his heart race. This was it. This was where they had taken the children. Zethera Prime was the Vrex Consortium's main base. It was a fortress world deep in unclaimed space, far from any major civilization. The planet had orbital defenses, a small fleet, and ground-based shields. It was where the Vrex conducted their highest-value auctions for the galaxy's wealthiest and most depraved buyers. Beings came from across known space to bid on rare slaves. The facility had never been successfully attacked. It was considered impregnable. Admiral Doyun called his senior staff together. They studied the intelligence on Zethera Prime. The defenses were formidable. A direct assault would be costly, but there was no choice. The auction was scheduled in 1 week. If they did not move fast, the children would be sold and scattered across the galaxy. They would be impossible to find. This was their only chance. They had to hit the fortress and hit it hard. Captain Minji studied the fortress layouts that intelligence had acquired. She proposed a bold plan. Ghost Company would infiltrate while the fleet engaged the defenses. They would use the battle as cover to slip inside the fortress. It was risky. If the infiltration failed, her team would be trapped. If the fleet could not break through, they would have no extraction. But Minji had never failed a mission. She was not about to start now. Dr. Junho volunteered to go with the infiltration team. Admiral Dohyun tried to refuse. Junho was a scientist, not a soldier. But Junho insisted. He understood Vrek psychology. He could predict their responses. He could help find the children faster. And if he was being honest, if his daughter was in that fortress, he needed to be there when they found her. Dohyun reluctantly agreed. Ghost Company would have a civilian embedded in their team. Task Force Hammer prepared for the assault. More ships arrived from Earth. The fleet grew to 35 warships. Marines checked their equipment. Pilots ran simulations. Doctors prepared for casualties. Everyone knew this would be the hardest fight yet. But everyone also knew why they were fighting. Somewhere in that fortress were 43 children who had been taken from their families. Children who believed had to believe that someone would come for them. And humanity was about to prove them right. Inside the fortress on Zethera Prime, the auction preparations continued. The Vreks had no idea what was coming. They felt safe behind their defenses. The orbital shields were the best money could buy. Their fleet, while small, was crewed by experienced mercenaries. The fortress itself was built into a mountain, with meters of rock and steel protecting the valuable merchandise inside. They had hosted auctions here for 50 years without incident. The 43 children from New Jeju were being held in a secure section of the fortress. They had been there for 3 weeks now. The Vreks kept them in decent conditions because damaged merchandise was worth less. They were fed, given water, and left mostly alone. But they were prisoners and they knew what was going to happen to them. They were going to be sold. Minho had taken charge of the group. At 14, he was the oldest. He organized the younger children, kept them calm, and made them believe rescue was possible. Every night he told them stories about Earth, about their families, about how human ships would come. Some of the younger children believed him. Others, like 8-year-old Yuna, knew better, but pretended to believe for the sake of the little ones. 7-year-old Nari asked about her father every day. Minho always told her he was coming. The buyers started arriving 2 days before the auction. They came in expensive private ships. Some were wealthy collectors who wanted exotic servants. Others were scientists from supposedly respectable institutions who wanted subjects for experiments. A few were just cruel beings who enjoyed owning other sentient creatures. They toured the merchandise, including the children. Minho memorized every face. If he survived this, someone needed to remember who these monsters were. One buyer, a Keltharian noble, lingered at the children's cell. He studied them with cold interest. Human children, he said, would be quite the conversation piece at parties. So rare, so exotic. 5-year-old Hana started crying. The Keltharian reached through the energy barrier to touch her hair. Minho stepped in front of her, glaring at the alien. The Keltharian laughed and walked away, but he made a note to bid high on the human merchandise. Task Force Hammer entered the Zethara system 4 days after intercepting the communication. They dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge, far from the planet. Admiral Doyun wanted the fortress to see them coming. He wanted them to have time to think about what was about to happen. The fleet formed up in attack formation and began the slow approach to Zethara Prime. It took 6 hours at sublight speeds. 6 hours for fear to build. The Vreks detected the human fleet immediately. At first, they were confused. Then they were angry. Then they activated all defenses and called for their mercenary fleet to intercept. The fortress commander sent a message to Admiral Doyun. This was neutral territory. The humans had no authority here. Leave now or face consequences. Dohyun's response was broadcast across all channels. You have 43 human children. Release them now. This is your only warning, the Vrex commander laughed. He sent back images of the children in their cells. He said he would release them after the auction to whoever bought them. If the humans wanted them back, they should have bid. He was still laughing when he cut the transmission. In the fortress control room, the Vrex staff celebrated their defiance. They truly believed their defenses were strong enough. They had no idea they were already dead. The Vrex mercenary fleet moved to intercept. 20 ships of various designs, all heavily armed. They outnumbered the human forces and knew the system better. Their admiral was confident. These humans were new to space warfare. They would learn today that the galaxy was dangerous. His fleet opened fire at maximum range, launching missiles and energy beams at the approaching human vessels. The human ships did not even slow down. Their point defense systems lit up the void. Thousands of small-caliber rounds and laser pulses intercepted the incoming missiles. Not one got through. The Vrex admiral realized his mistake too late. Human defensive systems were far more advanced than he thought. His second volley was already away when the humans returned fire. Human railguns fired at a significant fraction of light speed. The solid slugs hit Vrex ships with the force of small nuclear weapons. The first 3 ships simply disintegrated. The fourth took a hit that tore it in half. Explosions bloomed in the darkness. The Vrex formation broke as ships tried to evade. But the human fleet advanced in perfect coordination, their fire never stopping. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Inside the fortress, alarms began to sound. The staff watched in horror as their entire fleet was destroyed in less than an hour. Some ships tried to retreat. Human missiles caught them. Other ships tried to surrender. The humans ignored them and kept firing. The message was clear. There would be no mercy, no negotiation. The Vrex commander ordered the orbital defenses to fire. Every weapon platform around the planet opened up on the approaching human fleet. The orbital battle was more difficult. The defense platforms were well built and numerous. They poured fire into the human ships, but human shields held. The fleet split into groups, each attacking different platforms. Slowly, methodically, the humans destroyed the orbital defenses. Some platforms exploded. Others went dark as their power systems were targeted. Within 2 hours, the space around Zathara Prime belonged to Task Force Hammer. While the battle raged above, Captain Minji led Ghost Company toward the planet. They flew in stealth pods, small craft designed to be invisible to sensors. The pods dropped through the atmosphere during the chaos of the battle. The fortress defenses were focused on the fleet. No one was watching for infiltrators. The pods landed in the mountains near the fortress. Minji's team moved out immediately. The team included 40 operators, the best humanity had. Lieutenant Kiwon carried the cyber warfare equipment. Sergeant Daehyun had demolitions. Dr. Junho came with them wearing borrowed armor and carrying a pistol he barely knew how to use. But he knew the fortress layout. He knew Vrex psychology, and he knew his daughter was inside. They moved through the mountain terrain with practiced silence. They reached a maintenance entrance on the fortress's east side. Lieutenant Kiwon pulled out his equipment and went to work on the electronic lock. The Vrex security was good, but not good enough. Kiwon had been studying their systems for weeks. He cracked the encryption and disabled the alarms. The door opened silently. Ghost Company entered the fortress. Now came the hard part. Inside, the Vrex were panicking. Their fleet was gone. Their orbital defenses were falling. Some staff tried to evacuate. Others worked to move the most valuable slaves, including the children, to secure bunkers. The fortress commander screamed orders that no one followed. The buyers demanded protection. Everything was chaos. And into that chaos came 40 human soldiers who moved like death itself. Ghost Company moved through the fortress in teams of 4. They used suppressors on their weapons, killing guards silently. Lieutenant Kiwon hacked into the security system as they advanced, disabling cameras and locks. Dr. Junho guided them using the intelligence they had gathered. The children were being held in Section 7, 3 levels down. They had to get there before the Vrex evacuated them or did something worse. They reached the auction hall and found it full of panicking buyers trying to reach their ships. Captain Minji did not hesitate. Her team burst through the doors with weapons up. Some buyers ran. Smart choice. Others pulled weapons and tried to fight. Very bad choice. The firefight lasted maybe 10 seconds. When it was over, half the buyers were dead. The rest were on their knees with hands behind their heads. Sergeant Daehyun secured the prisoners with zip ties, while the rest of the team pushed deeper. They encountered more Vrex guards. These fought hard, but they were security guards facing Special Forces operators. The humans moved with brutal efficiency, clearing rooms and corridors. They were close now. Dr. Junho could feel it. His hands shook as he followed the soldiers. Somewhere ahead was Nari, his daughter. He was so close. They reached Section 7. The holding cells were behind a reinforced door. Lieutenant Kiwan used the codes they had stolen to open it. The door slid aside. Captain Minji went through first, weapon ready. Then she stopped. The cell doors were still locked, but through the energy barriers she could see them. 43 children. Human children alive, they had found them. After a month of hunting across the galaxy, they had actually found them. The children looked up at the soldiers with wide eyes. For a moment, nobody moved. Then little Hana saw the flag patch on Captain Minji's armor. The blue and white Earth flag with the golden sun. She screamed one word that broke everyone's heart. Home. The other children started crying then, crying with relief, with joy, with the release of a month of terror. They were saved. Minho stood up slowly. He had kept the other children together for so long. He had told them help would come, but part of him had stopped believing. Now he saw human soldiers, actual human soldiers, standing in the doorway. He demanded to see identification. Even now, protecting the others, making sure this was real. Captain Minji smiled and showed him her military ID card. Minho read it, nodded once, and then broke down completely. Lieutenant Kiwan disabled the cell barriers. The energy fields flickered and died. The children rushed out. Some ran to the soldiers. Others just stood there, unable to believe it was over. Dr. Junho pushed through the operators, searching faces. Then he saw her. Nari stood near the back, holding Yuna's hand. She looked up and their eyes met. Junho ran to her. She ran to him. Father and daughter crashed together, both crying too hard to speak. Captain Minji gave them 60 seconds. 60 seconds for reunions and tears. Then she started giving orders. They were still in enemy territory. Ghost Company formed a defensive perimeter around the children. Medics came forward to check for injuries or implants. The children were scared, traumatized but physically intact. The Vrex had kept them healthy because damaged goods sold for less. That probably saved the Vrex from an even worse fate. The team moved back through the fortress with the children in the center of the formation. More Vrex guards tried to stop them. They died. Some tried to surrender. The humans ignored them and kept moving. The mission was extraction now. Get the children out alive. Everything else was secondary. They reached the main corridor when the fortress commander made his last mistake. He activated the lockdown system, trying to trap them inside. Sergeant Daehyun placed breaching charges on the blast doors. The explosives tore through the reinforced metal like paper. Ghost Company pushed through the smoke with the children. Behind them, the fortress was falling apart. Human ships above were now firing directly at the structure. Not enough to destroy it completely, but enough to disable systems and create chaos. The message was clear. This place was done. They reached the landing pad where human dropships were waiting. The ships had flown down during the orbital battle, taking advantage of the disabled defenses. The children were loaded aboard quickly. Ghost Company provided cover as a few Vrex soldiers made one last attempt to stop them. The firefight was brief. Then the dropships lifted off, carrying the most precious cargo humanity had ever recovered. On the flagship Indomitable, Admiral Dohyun waited in the landing bay. When the dropships arrived and the doors opened, he saw them. 43 children, all alive, all accounted for. He felt something break inside him, the last pieces of the wall he had built after losing his own daughter. These children were going home. He sent a 3-word message to Earth. We have them. The news reached Earth in seconds. Across every human world, people celebrated. In New Jeju, the waiting parents received the message they had prayed for. Their children were alive. They were safe. They were coming home. Hyun collapsed in relief when he heard Minho was found. All across the colony, the sound of celebration mixed with tears. The nightmare was finally ending, but Admiral Dohyun was not done. The children were safe on his ship, protected by an entire marine company. Now came the second part of his mission. Make sure this never happened again. He looked down at Zathara Prime and gave the order. Task Force Hammer opened fire on the fortress. Not to destroy it completely, but to systematically dismantle every part of the Vrex operation. Captain Minji led another team down to the fortress. This time they were not rescuing. They were liberating. The fortress held hundreds of slaves from dozens of species, beings who had been captured months or years ago and given up hope of rescue. When human soldiers broke open their cells and told them they were free, many could not believe it. Some had been prisoners so long they had forgotten what freedom felt like. The freed slaves watched as the humans worked. They were thorough and methodical. Every Vrex database was downloaded. Every financial record was copied. Every piece of equipment was cataloged. The humans wanted to understand the entire network. Who bought from the Vrex? Who supplied them? Who looked the other way while they operated? Every name, every transaction, everything would be made public. The captured buyers and Vrex operatives were interrogated. Some talked immediately. Others tried to resist. Dr. Junho broke them all. He showed them what humanity was capable of. He showed them that their organization was finished. Their protectors were abandoning them. Their money was worthless. Their only hope for any kind of mercy was complete cooperation. Most of them talked. A few refused. Those were charged with crimes against humanity and held for trial. Lieutenant Kiwan and his cyber warfare team went after the Vrex financial network. They traced every account, every shell corporation, every hidden asset. Human hackers were very good at following money. Within days, they had frozen billions in assets. More importantly, they had proof of who was involved. Banks that knowingly processed slave money, corporations that provided supplies, government officials who took bribes to ignore Vrex operations. The evidence was released publicly across all galactic channels. The scandal was enormous. A Keltharian noble whose name appeared on buyer lists committed suicide rather than face trial. 3 Dulathi corporations saw their stock values collapse when it was revealed they had contracts with the Vrex. The Phocian Confederacy had to dismiss a dozen officials who were connected to the network. The corruption was everywhere. The Galactic Council tried to condemn human actions. They issued statements about excessive force and violation of sovereignty. Ambassador Rena appeared before the council one last time. She presented them with the evidence. She showed them which council species had bought from the Vrex. She showed them which officials had taken bribes. She destroyed their moral authority in 30 minutes. Then she walked out. Earth was withdrawing from the council pending major reforms. Before leaving Zathara Prime, Admiral Dohyan ordered a monument built. Human engineers worked fast. Within a week, a tall black obelisk stood where the fortress once was. The inscription was in every major galactic language. Here stood those who harmed human children. Their fate awaits any who follow their path. Humanity protects its young. Always. Below the monument were scattered the ashes of the Vrex leadership who refused to surrender. The 43 children were brought to see the monument. Minho stepped forward, still wearing bandages from injuries suffered during captivity. He placed a wreath at the base. The other children stood with him. They understood what the monument meant. Their people had crossed the galaxy for them. Their people had fought wars for them. Their people had destroyed an empire for them. Because that was what family did. Task Force Hammer left Zathara Prime after 2 weeks of operations. Behind them, the fortress was a ruin. The Vrex consortium was destroyed. Hundreds of slaves were freed and being returned to their homeworlds. Billions in assets were seized, and a message was carved into stone for the galaxy to see. Touch human children and face extinction. It was not a threat. It was a promise. The journey home took 2 weeks. The children stayed aboard the Indomitable, protected and cared for. Navy doctors checked them daily. Therapists helped them process the trauma. But mostly, they were just allowed to be children again. They played games. They laughed. They started to heal. Dr. Junho stayed with Nari every moment. He would never let her out of his sight again. When Task Force Hammer arrived back at New Jeju, the entire colony was waiting. Every single person who could walk was at the landing field. Parents stood at the front, barely able to breathe. When the transport ships touched down and the doors opened, there was a moment of absolute silence. Then the children came out. And then there was only crying and hugging and joy too big for words. Hyun held Minho like he would never let go. Minho, who had been strong for so long, who had kept the other children together through everything, finally let himself be a child again in his father's arms. Around them, 42 other reunions happened. Parents held children they thought they might never see again. The galaxy watched these scenes broadcast across every human channel, and the galaxy understood. Humanity was not like other species. Humanity protected its young, always.